Jacob Fatu played a role in the WWE SummerSlam 2024 main event between Solo Sikoa and Cody Rhodes for the WWE Undisputed title. However, we know that he was taken out during the main event by the announce table because it was Jacob Fatu coming off the top rope with a splash onto Cody Rhodes, and then he went down in pain after hitting the announce table. That didn't allow him to get into the ring when we had the big triumphant return of Roman Reigns to WWE, where he came in, took out Solo Sikoa, allowed Cody Rhodes to retain the undisputed title. But the question was really all about whether Jacob Fatu is actually injured. That was a huge topic of debate. In our reaction show following SummerSlam, it's been a huge topic of debate over the past 48 hours online. And yet, we still don't have a full, clear answer unless you want to go to this report from Fightful Select, which says that the original plan was for Jacob Fatu to sell a leg injury during the WWE SummerSlam 2024 main event. However, we are not sure, based on this report, as it says, if he was supposed to sell it to the extent that we actually saw. What does that mean, right? Well, he was planning to do the spot where he sells the leg injury, but we don't know if he actually got injured in doing the planned spot to sell the leg injury. That is kind of what we learned from this report. So, I will say this. Again, I went back and forth on this. You guys know. I started initially, I said, I think they did this to keep him away from Roman Reigns. You don't want to do the big showdown just yet. But then I started saying, well, man, he's really selling that thing. You had the referee help him out afterwards. You had Triple H mention in the press conference that he's a little banged up, but he wasn't sure how serious just yet. And then, of course, you had the photo surface online of Jacob Fatu wearing the walking boot. Well, that still perhaps leaves the mystery hanging in the air until we get to SmackDown on Friday. But I will tell you, based on a lot of different things, and going back and actually watching the replay multiple times. Again, I didn't get to do this after SummerSlam. I watched it on the first take. We went into the reaction show. I did not watch it during it. But going back and watching this thing several times, if you are to stay on the side of Jacob Fatu is an absolute selling mastermind and why he is so good as a professional wrestler, there are a couple things that I will tell you that really stand out as to why you could believe that side coming out of this, because again, we now know based on this report, it was the plan for him to sell this injury. We don't know if he actually got hurt selling the injury. Again, I'm going to leave it hanging because who am I to accuse someone of not having an actual injury if that's what happened? But I will tell you, if we want to go with the scenario of here's why Jacob Fatu is selling it and here's why he's selling it like a pro. Well, of course, as I said, the obvious reason would be that they want to keep him away from Roman Reigns for now, because you don't want to necessarily do that big showdown between Roman and Jacob Fatu just yet, because those, to me, are going to be the two biggest elements in this Bloodline Civil War. Roman Reigns leading the original Bloodline, and I do think, whether Solo Sikoa is kind of, the considered the tribal chief or not, we all have said it. Jacob Fatu has just been an absolute madman throughout all of this. I think he stood out more than anyone else in the story to this point before you got the Roman Reigns return. And so, I think Jacob Fatu and Roman Reigns is a match that WWE is clearly going to build towards in the future, and that is one of those many moments that we talked about in the recent video with Roman Reigns, why Roman Reigns came back alone. Because you're able to build to the moments of getting Jimmy back, getting Heyman back, getting Jay back into the mix, Sammy back into the mix, and now you've got another one of those big moments where we know Roman and Solo are going to have their face-off at some point soon. But we also know getting that Roman Jacob Fatu win is going to be that oh shit moment where you have these two guys in the ring together, perhaps by themselves, and people are going to realize what that means, right? Because that is a huge match that WWE has at their disposal. But there are a couple other things that stand out. If you want to support the idea that this is Jacob Fatu selling it, we're going to play both sides here, okay? If you want to support the idea that this is all a masterful selling job by a great professional wrestler, just like back in the day, we kept it real with kayfabe, right? If that's what's happening here. Here's another question, and I'm going to bring up some visual evidence here shortly. But another question is, where were the doctors after Jacob Fatu went down, right? And he went down in obvious pain. And he was over there selling this pain for a good little bit because you had to get, you had to wait for the things to get back in the ring. Solo had to get in the ring. Cody had to get in the ring. Roman had to come back. All that. That was a good little chunk of time between the injury and the actual, aftermath, right? But yet, I didn't see anyone over there checking on Jacob Fatu. We got the visual of Jacob Fatu with Cody Rhodes or with Solo Sikoa afterwards, right? They're both kind of sitting on the announce table. Jacob Fatu's got that expression on his face, the madman, right? But there's something else. If you go back and watch the replay on this. And if you want to also support the side that Jacob Fatu is selling this whole thing, if you go back and watch, this is the moment right here. If you see Jacob Fatu hit the table, he starts selling the leg, right? And then he gets up. So he starts to crawl over to the barricade, sponsored by Wheatley American Vodka. He stands up on the barricade, puts his arm over it, and you see him here kind of leaning, and he starts to hold that leg. But then Jacob Fatu does something interesting. He adds that extra emphasis. He does a little bit of a shake, right? As though, oh no, he just realized what happened. But he does a bit of a shake. As he does it, watch his facial expressions. It is very, it is a true professional wrestling sell job, if this is what is happening here, right? If you go back and watch the replay, you will see it, I promise. He does the shake where he realizes the pain's there, and then it's the facial expression. When you see the expression on Jacob Fatu's face, it may click, and you may be like, oh yeah, that guy he's a pro. And then he goes down from there. That's the spot, I think, that if you're going to kind of pick this apart and say this is where it turned from, we should be concerned, to maybe Jacob Fatu is just a tremendous professional wrestler as a selling, entity here. Like, maybe this is it. That's the moment. Watch his facial expressions. Watch him give the body emphasis as to adding that little bit of extra something to be able for the entire crowd to see what's going on here. Or maybe the guy was just so much in pain and he just went down. Maybe that was the case, right? But like I said, if we're going to play this thing out, if we're going to play the mystery as to whether this is happening or not, whether this is actually a significant injury, I think this is one of the pieces. When you add a couple of those things together, the report from Fightful, which says he was initially planned to sell this leg in the main event, and I just think it would be the worst luck ever to have him go into this selling a leg injury on the announce table, and then to actually get a leg injury. WWE would be snake bitten when it comes to this storyline. You're getting Roman Reigns back. You're getting ready for the huge payoff now with Reigns back in the fold. And for Jacob Fatu to get injured at the same time, it just seems like it would be very unlucky, right? Well, unlucky things happen. Like sometimes it's happened. And so maybe, again, the walking boot. I've seen a lot of people say, well, come on. He wouldn't be in a walking boot if he wasn't actually injured. Again, I've seen a lot of wrestling from like the early 80s when you go back and watch things and you see interviews. A professional wrestler would be in a walking boot to sell a professional wrestling injury and a story if he needed to. So I will say that. But again, I'm not a doctor, did not stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night, and I'm just telling you that I don't know if he's actually injured or not. And I know people are going to weigh in with their comments. We can't prove that he's not injured. But I do think this is one of those things where if you want to be invested in the Triple H era in terms of how they're doing things with these little bitty details, if it turns out to be the case, based on this report, again, we don't know the extent. We don't know if it went further than we expected. Maybe there was an actual injury. We don't know that yet. But if you want to see why some of the things are working so well in the Triple H era, it could be stuff like this. If this is how they're playing it, if this was all part of the plan, it could be stuff like this because this gets you invested, right? We're talking about this injury. And if they're going to the extent of having Jacob Fatu sell this injury the way that he did, and to have him wearing a walking boot in the airport, that's professional wrestling. That's what makes you believe, right? Like, those are the kind of things. And so I think this would be, again, one of those things that when you think about all the things we've seen in the Triple H era and how much attention is paid to the little details, you could connect it all together and see this being what is actually going on here. But there are still questions that have to be answered. I assume we're going to get some of those questions answered on SmackDown because, oh, by the way, remember, Jacob Fatu is one half of the tag team champions with Tama Tonga after they defeated DIY last week on SmackDown. So we will know right away what's going on with Jacob Fatu. And it will be, I think, worth the wait to see what is actually happening here. And look, if it turns out to be the other side where this guy's actually injured, he's out for a significant amount of time, well, then it was just a matter of bad luck because based on this report, if it's to be believed here, and I don't see why we wouldn't believe this, then this was the plan. And if the plan actually resulted in an injury, that would be some terrible luck for the WWE with this Bloodline saga. But you can see all the reasons why that may not be the case and why this may actually be a professional wrestling angle done with a great, great professional wrestler if it turns out that Jacob Fatu sold this like an absolute pro. So you guys let me know your thoughts. Have you changed your opinion? Where do you stand on the Jacob Fatu injury? We don't know yet, but I know a lot of people already in the comments were saying, look, this was all part of the plan to keep him away from Roman Reigns, which I think, that was my initial thought. But then I went to the other side of, I don't know, man, this is tough. He may actually be injured. And now maybe I'm back to the other one. So we'll see which one wins here. I would love to know what you guys think. As always, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Be sure to subscribe button. Hit the like button on your way out. And let me know what you think about this Jacob Fatu injury or not injury. And when do we get that big showdown between Jacob Fatu and the original tribal chief, the OTC, Roman Reigns?